Hello, my name is Eric Moreau. I'm the Director of Partner Enablement and Pre-Sales here at Acumatica. I'm looking forward to taking you through an overview of the Acumatica Project Accounting solution. Whenever I start a demo around project accounting, I always like to start with the project flow dashboard. In this dashboard, you'll see that we have a number of transactions originating from the left side of the equation, things like timesheets and expense reports that would be entered through via our employees, and then will be updated into the projects as well as into the general ledger. We also have other transactions like sales orders and AR invoices that may be impacting the project. We have the ability to manage purchase orders against our projects as well. And then, of course, we can manage AP invoices without the use of purchase orders if necessary. So those are all the transactions that are flowing in through the general ledger, which will then flow through to the project as well. On the right side of the equation, based on those transactions that have been entered, we're using what we call a billing rule in order to bill the client for transactions against the project. Also noted in the lower right-hand corner of the project flow is the pro forma invoice. Now, this is a new concept to some of you, and this is the ability to manage transactions against a project without actually booking them to the general ledger or booking them to the accounts receivable. For example, I can create a pro forma invoice for a project. It gives me as project manager an opportunity to review all of those transactions before I actually book them against the general ledger against receivables. In this case, this will be helpful if I have a new consultant and they build 8 hours, but maybe there was 3 or 4 hours of on-the-job training, so therefore I can't really bill the client for the entire 8 hours. Another dashboard that you see here as project manager is my project manager dashboard. From here, I can easily see my active projects. I can see things like late project tasks or underutilized employees by a simple drill back. So these are employees that I need to spend time with to help get them some billable hours so they're not such a drain on revenue at this point. I can see over budget projects as well as unprofitable projects. I can see my tasks as well as my overdue tasks. So again, because I can push this out to my mobile, I will be able to look at this at any time that I want and start off my day with that first cup of coffee having a view of my project manager dashboard. Another dashboard that's quite popular is the project consultant dashboard. This is the dashboard that your consultants will be looking at first thing in the morning to determine where they will spend their time. In this case, you can see that they have overdue tasks, and that's probably where they need to focus their efforts first. However, they could see all tasks, a billing ratio, and the projects that they're currently assigned to. Now, if they did have any open timesheets, they would be able to see those here as well. One of the first things I want to look at as it relates to projects is the concept of the project template. Like the name implies, it's going to allow me to build out a template for like or similar projects, and then when I go to create a new project, I can use this template to expedite the creation of those projects. So for example, these are all default pieces of information that can be edited when we create the project. Here I'm looking at a time and materials project using the pro forma invoice. And if I look down below, you'll see that we have the ability to manage the pro forma on billing. But other items you'll see here are whether we're going to recognize revenue at the budget level, at the task or task and item, as well as the cost budget level. If I wanted to use change order workflow, I would mark this, but for this project template, I am not going to do that. Other items that you will see here are just, again, very simple template that I want to be able to show you are different types of tasks. Okay, a revenue budget representing $10,000 in potential revenue, a cost budget representing the unit rate as well as the quantity that results in a calculation. These are my default employees for this type of project, default equipment, and some other information as well. So now that I have this item, I can go ahead and create a project using that project template. So I go into the projects module, choose create new project, and the first thing I will do is enter a customer name. Now from here, I can choose the template that we were working with, so you can see how information defaults into this project. Okay, so you'll recognize the pro forma item is going to be labeled. Okay, those are the tasks that we had seen, the revenue budget, cost budget as well. Okay. Now, if I wanted to, I can actually override or change any of this information if we're not going to use task 2, or if I need to add another task, I can simply just add a task here. I can edit the project as I'm creating it on the fly. Or if maybe instead of $10,000 in revenue, I'm going to have $12,000 in profit, or excuse me, revenue. Okay. So again, that was just the concept of the template within Acumatica. The next thing I want to talk about is a billing rule. And like the name implies, a billing rule is going to determine how we're going to bill our client for transactions that have been entered into the project. Now, billing rules can be quite simple, or they can be quite complex. So although I'm going to give you a little bit of an overview here, I don't expect you to understand or grasp completely how they exactly work, but I just want to lay the foundation a little bit, and hopefully I'll leave you with the thought that billing rules are very robust, very powerful within Acumatica. A good example of how you could use a billing rule is if I have clients that retain our organization, if I have a client go on site, excuse me, if a consultant goes on site and he is out there for less than 4 hours, so he bills 3 hours, our policy is we're going to automatically bill for 4 hours. So if under 4 hours, we automatically bill for 4 hours. Or conversely, let's say he's out there for 6 hours, and our policy is if you're out there for more than 4 hours, we automatically bill you for 8 hours. So again, he entered 6 hours, but our policy is to bill for 8 hours. So therefore, when we run project billing, it's going to generate an 8-hour invoice. Now, that's just an example to give you an idea of how they could be used. So let's go ahead and take a look at a particular billing rule. In this case, we're going to look at the time and materials billing rule. All right, and as I see, there's 4 different lines here. So let's go ahead and expand this out a little bit. And you'll see as I click on each line how the data in the right-hand side of the window is going to refresh. So in this case, I have travel cost plus markup. And the line we're going to focus on is the line amount formula. And if you look, we have a markup of 1.25. So if I enter $1,000 in travel expenses against a project, when I run project billing, it's going to appear as $1,250 on the invoice. And why is that? Because we're marking it up at 1.25. I could look at labor, where labor is actually looking at a price schedule that I will show you here in just a moment. Re-invoice of subcontractors is looking at what we call a rate schedule, which I will show you. And then materials is also back to that same at price schedule that we saw a moment ago. So let's go ahead and take a look at those. So if I go back into my favorites, I'm going to start with sales prices. And let's just take a look here. If I call up the labor group, I believe we have a labor group, project labor. Okay, this is the price that's going to get charged. So if I use this inventory item against a project, it's going to be charged at a rate of $80 or $50, depending on the item and the characteristics and the timing as well. Okay, you'll see that we have schedules over here that we can use effective dates. So that's the sales price, and that's actually found under receivables, so that's used throughout Acumatica, not just for projects. The other thing is the rate tables. If I look at the rate table here, again, I'm using a standard rate table, or a discounted one was available. I'm going to identify my rate type. In this case, it's going to be a time and material, labor task. As you change the different sequences, so for example, a project manager is going to have a $200 rate. However, if I look, my junior consultant will have a $100 rate. So depending on where we use that in that billing rule, it's going to look to here, it's going to look to the price schedule, or it's going to look to, again, a formula markup of, for example, 1.25 to determine what we should be billing. Now, types of billing rules that you could incur would be time and material, fixed fee, progress or percent complete, an internal or no bill project, work in progress billing, or cost plus markup. In order to continue with the overview, I'd like to call up a particular project and use that as an example of what a project would look like within Acumatica. So the pet project I'm going to review is TMR03. And in this project, again, you'll see it looks very similar to that template. And then again, when we created that project, you'll see very similar. but it is different. It's an actual project, and it does have transactions against the project. So one of the first things you'll notice is in the top right-hand corner, we have actual income, actual expenses that results in a margin. Now, that's probably a little bit low for some of you, but we're going to bump that margin up here in just a moment when we do some billing. But what I love about this, it immediately gives me visibility into profitability. I'm sure there are folks watching this video that aren't even sure if they're making any money on a project at the end of the day. Well, with Acumatica, that's no longer a guess. You're going to know right up front. So again, here's that summary tab. Now this project is going to allow for change order workflow. An example of where you would not would perhaps be a fixed fee, right? If it's a fixed fee, there is no change orders allowed. I can manage the restriction of employees. As you saw on the template, I can assign employees, and if I mark this button, only those employees can enter time against the project. As I continue down, there's the billing rule, and let's just take a look at this billing rule. The TM billing rule that we saw earlier was, well, I wouldn't say it was complex, but it was more challenging than this one. And this one is very simple. And why is that? Because this project is time and material. So it's simply going to be our time marked up for the selling price. Okay. All right. Other things that you'll see here are the tasks. So what are the tasks that are associated with this particular project? And here I have, looks like 4 different tasks. Well, one of them is a sales task, so it's a no bill task. Right? I have revenue. Now, in the project template that we looked at, we had one line item representing revenue. So it was $10,000. But in this project, you'll see that they're actually billing out revenue based on certain tasks. So again, you will have the ability, the way that you manage that. Now, here, the other thing I want to point out is the ability to summarize. Okay, and I'll probably show you that. Let's take a quick look. If I want to say only junior consultant tasks, all right, there's my junior consultant tasks. Or if I wanted to, I could zero that out and then just group by task altogether. So now it's going to mark that, and it's going to summarize my different tasks. And again, that's very helpful on the cost budget tab as well, because you'll see here that there's lots of transactions. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to just go back to this project here for just a second. Saw something that I didn't like, so I'm going to call that project up again. And I want to look at that cost budget tab this time. Okay, so what I can do, same type of thing, is I can group by task. I'm choosing junior consultant. And you'll see that we have a number of them. Or again, we can group by task by checking this box as well. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and save my project here, even though I haven't really changed anything. Okay, the next tab actually is my favorite tab, and that's the balances tab. All right, because this provides a nice summary of what's going on with this project. And yes, I did say that I do have a favorite tab within project accounting. If you look here, one of the things that you'll notice is the $22,000 in revenue. Well, it's the same $22,000 that we see up here. It's the same $18,000 that we have in expenses as well. Now, what you can do here is you can actually highlight a particular row if you're interested. What represents travel and expenses? Well, you can actually highlight the row and then choose view transactions. And when you view transactions, well, exactly that. You're going to see the transactions that make up that particular balance. So here I can see that it was air travel or meals or car rental, whatever the case may be. And I now have visibility into those transactions. From here, I can actually drill back and see the actual transaction that caused that amount to be entered against the project. So I can highlight the row here, view transactions. Now, you actually can do the same thing on the cost budget tab as well as the revenue budget tab. Okay, so we'll talk a little bit more about that a little bit later on. The other thing you'll see here is the view commitment details. So you'll see that we have a tab here for commitments. So we'll see that here in just a few moments. Well, still on the balances tab, folks, what I want to point out is that you have this unbilled AR and this unrecognized revenue billings in excess of costs. So this is what I call WIP, or work in progress. So my consultants have been entering time against this project, but because I have not run project billing yet, these balances, if you will, are going to remain on the balance sheet until I run project billing. When we talk about commitments, those are actually purchase orders that you'll find against your projects. Now, in this case, if I drill back, it's a simple consulting or subcontractor work, I believe, that we're billing out. And it looks like it's for TMRO3. And yep, this project task is junior consultant. I have 10 hours at $33 for a total of $333.30. You'll see that it's actually been approved. But once it's been approved, I can now find that information on the cost budget tab, and you will see how it's actually being included in my calculations. And what this is nice for, as I mentioned earlier, as we're talking at the document flow, the project flow, we don't want any surprises on our projects. So I'm going to be able to manage purchase orders as they're being applied against our project. So, so as they invoice us, we've kind of already earmarked it. And if you look, it's taking into account actual plus open committed, and that's what you're seeing here. Okay. Now, the other thing you could have done is from this line item or from this tab, I actually could have viewed commitment details, and it would have taken me to the purchase order as well. So that's why we have that item there. You don't necessarily need to go to the other tab, but you can access the purchase order 1362. You can access it from here as well. The other thing you'll see here is invoices. So the invoices tab, as you would expect, is the ability to view invoices that have been billed against this particular project. Now, if I drill back on this number 4574, I will see an invoice that supports the $22,424. So it's one invoice, thankfully, but very busy, lots of transactions that are involved. But regardless, I kind of want to give you a sense how everything ties together. Project ties to AR, AR ties to the general ledger, okay? We have change orders. Okay. Now, what I really like about the change order, it's going to allow me to track my margin because, again, understanding margin is very important within Acumatica. So if I drill back onto this change order, you'll see that I actually have two tabs. I have the cost budget tab, and that's for, again, 10 hours at $55 for a cost of $555. And then the amount that I'm going to bill the customer at $144.44. I use some weird numbers here so they'll stand out for me when we go to look at them on the project. So, but overall, I have a margin of 61.5%, which is very healthy on this change order. So again, if I go back onto the project and if I look at the cost budget tab, and I think I have to scroll over a little bit further here, sure enough, there it is. There's the potential change order amount. And the reason it's potential, it's not been released yet. Okay. We also have the ability to manage change requests, which is available more for project accounting on the construction side. I can see all of my activity history, so all the transactions that have been entered against this project, and then what employees are able to work on this project. There's additional information under here, but for now, the only item I'm going to point out is the fact that you can bill equipment against a particular project. And you'll note that you'll have a run rate as well as a setup rate, of which there is none, but then you also have a suspend rate. So even though we're not running the piece of equipment, we are still going to charge the $20 to have that piece of equipment on site. So again, that was just an overview of a project and what it looks like. Hopefully it's starting to give you a good idea of what you can do within your projects. The next thing I want to talk about is running project billing. Now, earlier I talked about the pro forma invoice. So this project, TMRO3, is going to allow me to create a pro forma on billing. Okay. Now, when I run project billing, it's going to take just a moment here. And what's going to happen is a new window is going to pop up for us. All right, and you'll see it's labeled the pro forma invoice, and you'll recognize that $41,180. That represents the WIP that we saw on the project. So if I go on the time and materials tab, I can actually see all the transactions that represent that money. And again, this is unbilled transactions at this point. Well, what I had said about the pro forma, it allows me as project manager to review what I would call the invoice before it actually posts. All right, so now I can go back and forth to the, maybe go to the client project manager and say, hey, can you review this? This is what I'm going to bill you unless you have any objections. So you kind of go back and forth, everybody agrees, and then you can release this transaction. Now, let's say you don't agree. What you can do is if you scroll over to the right here in this amount to invoice field, let's say I want to override this rather than charge $1,600, I'm going to charge $1,000. So as soon as I do that, you'll see that the status is immediately updated to say, okay, well, how do you want to handle that $600? Because I have to do something with it. I can't just make it disappear because it's already been booked against the project. So I can either hold remainder, and if I hold remainder, next time I run project billing, that $600 will get picked up and put into the project. I could write off the $600, or if I choose to, I could write off the entire line. Now, what I'm going to do for now is I'm actually going to put that back to the $1,600 because I want this entire amount to be cleared from the project so you can see what that looks like. So we're going to change this to $1,600. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and save that. And now you'll note that the pro forma invoice is on hold mode, in hold status. And if I take this off, it's going to request an approval. So again, I can send this off to another project manager for approval if I wanted to. You'll see it's pending approval. At this point, I'm going to go ahead and choose approve. Once it's approved, I can then release it. So it's still not posted to the project yet. It's not posted to the general ledger yet. All right, all this is doing is it's moving it from the pro forma to the actual invoice that's going to get sent to the customer. So again, pretty quick there, just a few seconds. And now if I go in the financial details tab, there is AR invoice 8880. Okay, and now I can drill back and see that invoice. Now at this point, if I'm looking at the invoice and I realize there's an error, I actually can delete the invoice. I can delete the pro forma, and I can start over again by running project billing if I needed to. Otherwise, if everything is good here, I'm happy with it. It's 41,000. Okay, I can go ahead and release this transaction. All right, now there's a lot of transactions representing that $41,000, so it is going to take just a moment. But at this point, it's compiling the transactions. Okay, and then we'll be able to go back to the project and see how the transactions have been cleared off of the balances tab. So to this point, let's go back. Okay, I'm still on TMRO3, but look what happened to my margin, right? Significant improvement in the area of margin, and that's because we've added the $41,000 to the $22,000 that was already there. If you note, the balances tab is now blank on the balance sheet. Assets, liabilities is now zeroed out because we have booked revenue against that particular project. If you go to the invoices tab, you'll see some additional information here as well. There is the pro forma invoice that we had created and released. And then and you'll note that it's closed for 41,000. And then we have the AR AR invoice, and that is showing up here as well. And its status is open, meaning it's not yet been paid, where the $22,000 invoice had been paid. As I wrap things up here, I want to take a look at some reports within project accounting. One of the first ones, and probably my favorite report, is the project summary report. So I'm going to go ahead and call up the TMRO3 and review this report. Okay, so again, a nice summary of the project. Unfortunately, we're quite a bit over budget here, but regardless, at least it's going to let me know that there's my labor, subcontractor, and travel. And then you'll recognize there's the invoices that we had saw. There's the 4574 for 22,000 and the 8880 for the 41,000. So we just created that now. And then also there's the purchase order, so I can see open purchase orders against these transactions as well. So that's a very nice report. Another one here, there's not a lot of data here, but I do want to point it out to you because I know some of these projects can go for long periods of time, although it could be several months. I've seen, talk to clients where their projects actually go several years. So just recognize that you'll be able to get a trend here for your projects. And again, you have the ability to drill back and see what's going on. And then you also see profitability by month if necessary. Okay. Another report would be, excuse me, just an overall project profitability report, which I could run it by project manager if I wanted to. But again, here's all my projects, income, expenses, as well as margin. And then the last report we'll show you is the project balances report. Sorry about that. And again, notice I can run it by project and by task. Otherwise, it's going to be a summary. Many pages, 73 pages, but you'll see the project, and the task. So as we scroll through here, you'll see the different tasks and the different projects. As we wrap things up, I want to take you back to the project flow dashboard so you can kind of have an idea of what we were talking about. So now I didn't actually enter any time entry or expenses into the project, but I did show you where you could, again, drill back and see those transactions. We did talk about having a purchase order against a project and how you can monitor future expenses so you don't have any surprises, if you will. All right. We talked about AR invoices. Right, how that information would flow into the general ledger. And then we also talked about the billing. We talked about the pro forma invoice and how as a project manager, you can use that particular item to work back and forth with your project manager on the other side to make sure that when they get the bill, it's in line with what their expectations would be. And then we also talked about the billing rule and how robust that billing rule can be in terms of how am I going to bill my client. And again, that's always a challenge. Every company bills differently, and therefore it's important that our billing rules are flexible. I think I gave you a nice couple of examples here. You know, the consultant in the field for 3 hours, but we're going to bill for 4 because that's our policy, or 6 hours, we're going to bill for 8 because, again, that's our policy. I want to thank you for your time. I hope you found the session informative. Have a great day. Thank you.